Everybody's got a price, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price, $1 million man. Everybody's got a price, $1 million man. Everybody's got a pod, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price, $1 million man. Everybody's got a price.
What's up, everybody? It's Marcus D'Angelo, and we are back for another episode of Everybody's Got a Pod, except this week, we are not joined by WWE Hall of Famer and legend, the $1 Million Man. Nope, Ted and his wife Melanie decided to take a spontaneous trip, and Ted offered to still go ahead and do a recording while he was on the road. And I said, you know what? Why don't you guys just go ahead and have fun? It's been a while since we did a best of episode, and so that's what we're going to be doing today. Today, we're taking a look back to 1993, and we're starting at the top of the year, Money Inc., going into the Royal Rumble, and then, of course, WrestleMania 9. And then the summer of 1993 as Ted began to wind down his career in the WWF. And finally, we'll end up when Ted's career did come to an end, when he went back to Japan to tag team with Stan Hansen back in 1993 and suffered, ultimately, the injury that would end his career. So it's a look back 31 years today. It's a lot of really fun content and awesome stories and information from the man who lived it. Sit back, relax, and enjoy a look back at 1993 in the WWF. Yourself and IRS will both be in the Royal Rumble in 1993, but you won't have an actual match there. Ted, does it change your payoff if you're in the Rumble itself as opposed to having a match at the event?
I would think so, yeah.
Like less money, presumably?
Obviously, well, yeah. I mean, because you're gonna get everybody gets paid for the Rumble, but if and everybody that is in the Rumble and also has a match, they should get a little more. So,
because it's the thought being that there's like a lot of resting inside of the Rumble, and you're not having an actual match. You can kind of hide a little bit in there and get in the corner and all that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, but the other aspect of that is who are the last guys in the ring. That means a lot. And I can't even remember how that one went, but
Yokozuna wound up winning that one. You lasted in there for over 20 minutes, so you were in there for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, I don't know, like, you're going from single star to now you're in a tag team. Now it's like you don't have a match on the event. Would you say that you're frustrated at all, or happy to be doing what you're doing?
I was happy to be doing what I was doing. I mean, if I had seen it greatly affecting my paycheck, I mean, I might have had something to say, but I was fine with it.
Coming out of the Rumble, we get an unforgettable angle at Monday Night Raw as Brutus Beefcake makes his return to the company and gets a singles match with you. Let's have a look at the final moments of this one.
Brutus has embarrassed, let's tell it like it is, has embarrassed Ted DiBiase.
No, totally embarrassed the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. It's been all Beefcake.
And you hear the chant Irwin, which he does not like at all. Irwin R. Schuster on the outside.
Oh, no! That's it. The referee saw it right there. I'm just glad that was to his back right there.
That could very well have been an intentional disqualification. I believe it was.
Absolutely.
Brutus Survivor Beefcake may have won this matchup as a result of a disqualification, but I'm sure he doesn't feel like a winner right now. Did you see Irwin R. Schuster clobber Beefcake from behind? It was not in the head. It was on the back, but nonetheless, it certainly has taken its toll on Beefcake.
Beefcake, yeah, you're right about that, but I'll tell you what, he would have pinned him anyway.
Yes, Brutus Survivor Beefcake had the momentum over Ted DiBiase until Irwin R. Schuster came out. Nonetheless, it'll be a victory in the record book for Brutus Survivor Beefcake, and we'll be back as we continue. Wait a minute, let's stay with this.
Hey,
Beefcake is back on his feet, and DiBiase right.
You lost the match. Get out of the ring.
Wait a minute. DiBiase has Beefcake hooked. No, please. It looks like Schuster's going to take a run. Take a run at Beefcake. Please don't let this happen. Jimmy Hart even trying to say no. The official cannot allow this to happen. No, don't let this happen. Schuster with a briefcase, and Beefcake is still hurt. He's going to take a run at him. Please don't let it happen.
Okay, so yourself and IRS destroy the surgically repaired face of Brutus Beefcake. Ted, what do you remember about all this?
I think it was they were parasailing or something, weren't they?
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's how the accident happened. And I can't remember what it was that hit him in the face. It basically took his face off or crushed his face. I mean, I think they had to reconstruct his skull.
yeah, it was knees. Somebody was parasailing and their knees collided with his face.
Yeah, yeah, and so yeah, it was rough going for him. And we, I can remember when having this match, I wanted to be careful, you know, not to hit him in the head.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And of course, with that thing at the end, when they came with it, obviously, he gets his hands up and he protected himself, and it was like, it's kind of like, did the briefcase really hit him or not?
When you're stepping into the ring with a guy who suffered an injury like that, and you said it, you wanted to be careful and protect him. Like, I mean, it's got to change the way that you throw punches, the way that you do almost everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, but he was, and that's the other thing. It's like even throwing punches. When you throw a punch on a guy, you don't aim for his forehead, and you don't aim for his nose. It's like it's usually like a shot to this, but where you're really landing is here.
Okay.
And you just, when you do it, it's really here more than anything else. And I can remember how many times I would take I'd take his head like this, and I got him by the chin, and I would turn his head up like that, so this part was open.
Ah, okay.
Throw the punch.
Tricks of the trade.
Tricks of the trade. And I threw a pretty good punch.
You did. I think I actually just saw you on a list of best all-time working punches. So Brutus was in good hands there. Jimmy Hart, he's going to turn babyface after this attack, and Hulk Hogan will make his return on February 22nd to set up the big match at WrestleMania 9. Hogan returns, and you're getting the nod to be on the opposing side of him. I mean, this had to feel like a pretty good spot, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, of course.
So the March 15th Observer will report that you'll suffer a herniated disc. It doesn't say when, but I'm seeing where you're working against the Nasty Boys on house shows at this time. And this is months and months ahead of before you'll suffer the injury in Japan that's going to end your career with a disc. Do you recall how exactly you suffered this injury on the way to WrestleMania 9?
No. The doctor said, what started happening is, I started getting this burning sensation, and it was like in my it was in my arm, and it was kind of like it was kind of like there's nothing I could do to get that fire to go out. And what the doctor said was that I had herniated a disc, actually C5 and C6 in my neck, and it was because of that the pain was being caused by the disc, laying on that nerve.
Mm.
And so what do? You go in and they took two discs out and they fused them together, and that was it. And it wasn't until they did that I didn't do that for a long time.
Okay, so this may have actually been kind of part of what would ultimately end your career. You just didn't have it dealt with at this time because you have a big high profile match coming up.
Yeah. And so I just, you do the best you can do. And then once I had that surgery, I think that was it.
Now, Hogan's going to return to action at a house show in Lakeland, Florida on March 19th. And despite your injury, these herniated discs, you work the match, which is being viewed as a warm-up of sorts for Hulk. Ted, how important was it for you to work this match, even though you were dealing with this injury?
Well, I mean, okay, I was dealing with an injury, but I mean, of course, and a lot of that is now. I don't think I would have been quite so anxious to jump in the ring. And again, this is not okay. Dealing with Hulk Hogan is a lot different than dealing with, say, the Warrior.
Mm.
The Warrior, I just don't think he cared about anybody.
He'd have been reckless despite your injury.
Yeah. And that's just it. For the first rule of thumb is protect your opponent. That's the unspoken word is, if something's going to, even try to sacrifice yourself, because if both guys are thinking that way, less injuries are going to happen.
And you felt like Hogan was one of those guys that was going to take good care of you out there, despite
your absolutely. I never worried about it.
How do you protect yourself and your new neck injury when you're in the ring? Just not taking quite as many bumps, maybe? Yeah,
I guess you try. Obviously, you don't want to get dropped on your head,
right?
But and taking a flat back bump is not that hard. It's kind of like. But I think that's what the doctors were saying was this happened. This happened over a period of time, and I think Jake had the same thing.
Mm-hmm. He did,
and I think there's been several guys have it, and it's basically from hitting the mat because you do this.
Yeah,
you touch your chin, and so. Where you're landing is right there, where your cervical, whatever, where your neck meets your like
your spine.
Yeah, meets your spine. C5, C6, right there. And so I had both those discs removed, and they replaced them with. They do it with something artificially now, but. They replaced mine with bone chips from my hip.
Man, fortunately, you also had Mike to rely on out there, and he was a good bumper. So I'm guessing that you would probably be on the apron a little bit more often during these matches after that.
Yeah. Just do what you can.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get to Mania. It's at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, and you and Mike are on 5th against Hogan and Beefcake. Before we get to your match, I wanted to mention that Jim Ross is going to make the jump from WCW to WWF, and he'll make his debut here at WrestleMania in a toga to go with the Caesar's Palace thing. Man, Jim is considered by most folks to be the best commentator of all time. Would you agree with that assessment? Is Jim the best ever?
Yeah. He was good. And again, Jim Ross started with Cowboy Bill Watts.
Yes, sir.
And so he learned from the best too.
And he's a guy that you're very familiar with at this time. So, for him to come in, it probably had to feel like a bit of a reunion. Would you say that you're close friends with JR outside of the ring?
Well, yeah. I mean, like not bosom buddies, but yeah. I mean, he's one of those. I mean, it's not somebody that again, wrestling is wrestling, and you sometimes you don't see people for a long time. But when you see him again, it's like you saw him yesterday, and you just pick up where you left off.
You ever go drinking with JR?
I can't remember.
You might have then.
Yeah, maybe that's why I can't remember.
I know he loves his Moscow mules, so
yeah,
ring a bell. All right, well, let's get to your match. The tag team titles are on the line, and you're facing the biggest box office attraction in the history of wrestling in his return to WrestleMania. Let's have a look at this one.
Gets there, makes the tag.
You heard that tag.
And Beefcake tags Hulk Hogan.
But the referee didn't see the tag. Who cares?
I doubt if he saw either.
Beefcake's out of there. We need him out of there. Hogan is back.
Big right hand. Hogan now becoming known at what DiBiase. Irish whip. Caught him with a foot right to the face. Catches on again. on the lower abdomen.
Lower abdomen.
He's got that.
That was bargain basement.
Oh, he's
He
using
used the titanium thing.
Fire with fire.
There's
No referee. There's no referee. Jimmy Hart, you get out of there, you little miserable runt.
A referee is down. Jimmy Hart trying to.
Here goes the tag team title.
What is Hart doing?
Who knows
He's
what?
turning his back.
No.
Try jacking up the referee.
2, 3.
That doesn't count. That doesn't count. That does not count.
Jimmy Hart has counted down the champion.
But who knows? It may count. I don't know what they're doing here right now.
Well, Beefcake and Hogan have got the tag team championship belt. Here comes another official.
I'm not sure about this.
What kind of a calling are they going to rule on this? Let's see this. There we go. There we go. He's raised a hand of Money Inc.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the referee's decision. The winner of this bout as a result of a disqualification. And still, World Wrestling
Yes.
Money in
Like they told me last night, the money's in the bank.
All right, so some hijinks there with Brutus's mask, and you guys retain the belts against Hogan and Brutus. So pretty fun stuff. I don't know what the hell the Jimmy Hart was doing with his jacket thing. It was pretty weird.
I don't know either.
What do you think about a finish like that at a show like WrestleMania? Good?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like an anticlimactic.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can't remember where we went from there. Is what I'm saying. It's not that's so long ago.
I know that you and Mike would go on to work with the Steiners, so maybe that's kind of what Vince was eyeing, is like wanting to keep you guys kind of strong going into that. And Hogan's got a little something coming up here that we're going to talk about here in a second. Meltzer would point out that you look larger than Hogan here, who has really slimmed down since the Hulkamania days due to the steroid situation that the WWF was dealing with. What did you think when you first saw this more trim, lean version of the Hulkster?
I didn't see that much difference. I mean, it's like, okay, he's not as huge as he used to be, but he's still a big guy. And in good shape. So, I didn't really, I didn't think that much. I mean, it was like, it wasn't one of those, oh, wow. I didn't look at it that way.
And he's still like very muscular, but yeah, if you a side-by-side photo of him from like 1988 and there in 1993, ooh, brother, he trimmed way down.
Yeah.
He's been gone for a while doing his thing in Hollywood. When you get back into the ring with him, are you noticing the ring rust, or is he blowing up more quickly, or is he riding the apron for the most part?
No. He was, I didn't notice a difference.
Wow.
I really didn't, and of course, being Hulk, if there's, and especially in a tag match situation, if there's going to be a hot tag, he's the one that's going to get it.
Gotta be,
and that means that his partner, and like again, Beefcake did the body of the selling. That's the deal. Is you work the one guy over, and he finally makes what they call the hot tag, and then here comes the Hulkster, and he beats you both up. I think that's what they just did.
Well, Ted, I won't keep you too much longer. I know you've got to go catch a plane out there to Indianapolis soon. But while we're here, I do have to ask you, Mania is going to end in kind of controversial fashion with two WWF title changes in about 2 minutes. Yokozuna is going to defeat Bret Hart, and then himself will lose to Hulk Hogan in an unscheduled match. So Hogan works with you guys, then he comes out after Hart's match with Yokozuna, and he's going to defeat Yokozuna very quickly. And a lot of fans seem to believe that Hogan politicked himself into the spot, and Bret Hart feels that Hogan pressured Vince into giving him the belt. In my mind, it was likely just a business move on Vince's part because Hogan is a proven draw and he's returned to the company. But, I know that you're buddies with Hulk and you've got a good relationship with Bret. But what are your thoughts on the matter? Do you feel that it was some kind of a political thing by Hogan?
I don't really. No, I don't. I don't see that. I don't see that. It was like it's a way for Hulk Hogan to become the champion again without having to wrestle Bret Hart and beating Bret. That's what I think.
Okay, so they just wanted to get the belt on Hulk.
And I mean, again, because Bret was the champion going into that first match, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I just, I don't. Yeah, to me, it was a way to get the belt off of Bret and back on Hogan without them having to wrestle each other.
So Bret claims that there were actually photos taken after this of he and Hogan kind of wrestling over the belt, and the plan that he was told was that it was supposed to be he and Hogan working at I believe it was King of the Ring in 1993. Ultimately, Hogan would wind up working with Yokozuna, and Bret says that it was just changed last minute by Hogan, who said, quote unquote, that Bret was not in his league. Now, I don't know how true any of that is. Certainly, I wasn't there, and Bret's account is his account. But all that being said, Ted, do you feel like a Hulk Hogan versus Bret Hart main event, babyface versus babyface for the title, would that have been a big draw?
It's hard for me to say. I mean, I don't know. It's wow.
Kind of a tough one, right?
Never really thought about it. I mean, I have all the respect in the world for Bret in terms of, and he and I have worked well together. And
it's kind of two conflicting styles when you look at Bret Hart and Hogan. Bret Hart is very much a technical wrestler, but not a huge character guy. Bret Hart was never going to cut like the big, fancy promo. He wasn't like a cartoon character. On the other side, you've got Hulk Hogan, who looks like he's straight out of a comic book and acts like he's out of a cartoon on his promos. So it's like very conflicting styles. I don't know. Sometimes opposites make for a good match.
Well, and again, see, that's I grew up in the business, and I understand Bret Hart's style because that was like a style that, it's kind of like, this is back when we were, when we weren't, we understood that most people, watch wrestling and say, okay, it couldn't possibly be real, but we make it as realistic as we can. I think it would make a decent match, but you're going to have to work to Hulk's style. I think. Because, Hulkster was not a guy, who, because I mean, I worked with him, but I didn't spend a lot of time, with a wrist lock or a headlock or anything like that. Most of the time it was battling. And, what I did at the first of a match with him is I just put over his size. Like I'd lock up with him and he would just shove me off and I'd hit the corner like, whoa, and then lock up and I would like top wrist lock him and he would just power out of it. And then I'm shaking my head going, what do I do with this guy? And so then we lock up and I back him into a corner, and the referee says break and I go to break and then I sucker punch him and I take over on him. And then I just beat him down, and I beat him down. But every time I try to pin him, he kicks out. Mm-hmm. And finally, I go for something, whatever it is, and I miss. And then when I turn around, I look. He's, and I'd have him on his knees, and I'd hit him, and he would do that thing where he just went
the Hulk up,
and then he hulks up, and then when he hulks up, it's all over. He does his thing.
So, yeah, Bret Hart would have certainly had to adjust his style to work with Hogan. And, for perspective, too, Hogan is used to coming off this really big run where he was like Rocky, essentially, where it was just one monster heel after another. Hogan looks like he's down and he can't beat him. then of course he beats him and he's on to the next. It seriously is a formula just like they used in the Rocky movies. And now, it's the possibility of working with a guy who's not a monster heel. He's a smaller technical baby face. Now, look, I know that you weren't there for any of these conversations, but I do know that you're a smart guy who's been in wrestling for a long time. Would you say that Hulk Hogan took a look at Bret Hart and his size and said, that doesn't work for me, brother?
There's no way of knowing, but maybe. Yeah, maybe. Because they didn't really have a run.
Never. I think they had maybe one match in WCW, and it was like some underwhelming, like 3-minute thing.
Yeah. And of course, I don't know if there's I've never heard that, but was there any kind of personality conflict?
I know that Bret Hart was always fine with Hulk and felt like they had a good relationship. They'd worked together in like Japan and elsewhere over the course of their careers before this. And so according to the story, I think that Bret said that once he won the championship, Hulk started treating him differently, where he was like a little bit more cold with him. And then after this, apparently Vince told Bret that Hulk had come to Vince and said, I don't want to work with him. He's not in my league. Something to that effect. Now, again, Bret Hart has got his own perspective on things. Neither of us were there, so we don't know how legitimate these claims are. But when you hear stuff like that, and then you kind of start putting the pieces together, like I have, like, well, Hogan was used to working with big guys, very different style. This is like the new generation type wrestler, and Hulk Hogan's the quote unquote old generation. It does kind of make you stop and think, like, man, why didn't those two wrestle?
Yeah, and I never thought about it, and I don't know the answer to any of those questions. But I mean, I respect both the guys. I mean, I have a world of respect for Bret. I mean, and Bret and I we had great matches together. But again, I was big, but I was big enough, like here's Hulk, and maybe here's Bret, and here's me.
Mm-hmm.
I was a big guy. I mean, 6'4", and and Bret wasn't. Bret was maybe, I don't even know if he's 6 foot. But
right. So maybe that made you a little bit more attractive to Hulk because it looks like you could put him in danger, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, things are not working out great for Vince aside from that either. This is also around the time that Vince is going to resign as the president of Titan Sports in the wake of the steroid controversy. So he's not indicted until later in 1993. But I think he kind of sees everything coming down the pike. And so he resigns and puts Linda in charge, I believe, as the new president of Titan Sports.
Mm-hmm.
With everything that's going on, Ted, were you confident that the company is going to be able to survive and thrive despite this situation and Hulk, the biggest star ever, getting ready to leave?
I had no worries. I mean, Vince is, he's a shrewd guy, but he's extremely intelligent too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I could see why he might make that move just as a precautionary move in case, in case the worst happens, right?
Yes.
So I get it. I understood, and and for me again, what year was that? This is 92,
93.
93. So I'm approaching the 40 mark, and by now I'm also because of what happened to me personally, my relationship with my wife at home. Well, I mean, we nearly divorced, and because she discovered that I was running around, and so there was a whole lot of other things going on for me at the same time. This was when I made an about face and a return to a very heavy relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And I never envisioned it going where it went. Of course, I sincerely believe that's all God's hand anyway. But I end up I formed part of David Ministry, and by this time I'm starting to go out. I mean, I'm still involved in wrestling, but I'm starting to go out little by little and start speaking in churches and sharing my story. And so I wasn't like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do if the whole thing collapses?
I gotcha. Okay,
You
so
know,
you had an exit strategy kind of built in with
yeah,
your new
ministry.
endeavors.
Yeah.
Excellent. Now, so good. I mean, you're staying out of the issues then between Hulk and Vince, which apparently, could get really heated at times. Everybody says that they have something of like a love-hate relationship where sometimes they really, really love each other and sometimes they can kill each other. Did you ever witness any of that stuff behind the scenes?
I never witnessed it. You know, uh, I might have, uh, maybe hearing Hulk, like at different times, like da 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 da, da, uh, you know, going off just, but he, obviously, whatever he's going to go off about, it's nothing. He's not going to say anything that's going to give you or me any hint as to what he's dealing with.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, your personal business with the boss is your personal business with the boss. So,
And I think that Hulk Hogan is shrewd enough to know that, like, he might like and trust you, but he's gonna be careful what he says probably around anybody and not
yeah,
say anything
absolutely.
that he wouldn't say
Absolutely.
to Vince's face.
Anybody in the business that has half a brain needs to know that. I mean, at that point, if you're going to confide in a friend, then it better be your best friend, who you are sure that, it's safe with them. So,
What was your relationship like with Hulk at this time? Would you have considered him a friend in this
oh
era?
yeah, oh definitely. Well, once he and I, if I may have stated this before, but I had Hulk's first match in Madison Square Garden. First
That's
time
a
he wrestled in Madison Square Garden, he wrestled me, and I put him over big time because I knew they were going to get him over. And so years later, after he gets to be a big star, and when this new meeting with Vince came along, and I'm going to come back, um, um, I remember him coming to me and saying, uh, he said, "I told you before, but I owe you one." I
man.
mean, it was kind of like, that was kind of like him saying, he's going to make sure that I'm one of the guys he works with. So,
As a good guy to be on the right side of.
oh yeah, yeah. So
And
we've always had a great relationship, and it was funny. See, walked in the dressing room, he shook my hand, and he said, "It's payback time. Here we go." So that's all I
man,
needed to hear.
that tells you a lot about him too as a
Yeah.
person, where he
Yes.
remembers that and he's willing to repay
Yeah.
the favor. What about today? How's your relationship with Hulk today?
I still love the Hulkster. I haven't seen him. It's not like, it's not one of those relationships where we talk to each other once a week or once a month. But that's the way it is with a lot of wrestlers. I mean, like, yeah, other guys. I mean, a lot of former wrestlers live in Tampa, Florida.
hmm
I mean, Hogan. I mean, uh,
Steve Kern?
Steve Kern. Steve Kern's another very good friend of mine. I mean, I met Steve in Atlanta, and I was with him the night that his first child was born.
Wow.
Yeah, and so Steve and I met in Atlanta, and we stayed good friends, and have been for years. But it's not like, if I'm going to go to Tampa for anything, I'll call him. He's one of the guys I'll call and say, "Hey, buddy, I'm on my way down there. Let's see if we can get some time together." That type of thing.
Oh, cool.
And so Steve lives down there, and he's a good friend of mine. Mike Rotunda, who I tagged with. Mike and I are pretty good friends, but it's not like it's almost like it's just the nature of the wrestling business. It's like, these guys, and there are, like, obviously exceptions to that. It's kind of like, like you see each other and then you go away, and your paths grow, and then when you see each other again, you just pick up where you left off.
Right.
And it's almost like, it never stopped. Let's just keep going.
And that's how you categorize your relationship with Hulk as well. You just see him again, and it's like,
Yeah, yeah. When I see him again, it's like, hey, here we go. And of course, that's unless I had if somebody called me and said, "Hey, I got this odd idea for for Hulk Hogan," and I said, "Well, tell me what it is first, and I could probably tell you what he'll say."
You know him pretty well after all these years, huh?
Yeah. So, but of course, I would never. I might say, well, I can give you my opinion, but I'll run it by him. And so this has been a couple times, and I mean, just literally a couple times where some people, like tried to contact him through me, and obviously, I'm not going to put anybody in direct contact with him unless he wants it.
Right. No, because I'm sure that there's a lot of people clamoring to get in touch with Hulk.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, Ted, if anything signaled a change of the times here in this era, this is probably it. On the 5/17 Monday Night Raw, Sean Waltman would score a huge upset victory over Razor Ramon. Waltman had gone by a few different names since coming into the company and working as an enhancement guy, but this is a fun piece of business. We know that this incident is going to lead to the rivalry between yourself and Razor Ramon when you and other heels start to taunt Razor about losing the match to the much smaller kid. But I'm curious. You're in this era and you grew up in this era of these massive guys, over the top guys, great physiques, huge guys. And at a glance, Waltman does not look like the typical wrestler. What did you think when you saw this smaller guy coming into the biggest stage in pro wrestling?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I said, this is great. I mean, because here's the thing, real old school wrestling. I mean, like my father's era, the era just before me and all these other guys. It's me and Hanson and Brody and Hulk and all these guys. It's Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon loved guys with big bodies. I mean, Vince, he worked, even now, I'm sure he stays in tip top shape. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm about to turn 70, so I think Vince has got to be somewhere around 80 now.
I know he's in his 70s. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's almost 80, but I mean, I could guarantee you this: if I saw him again today, he would still have the guns. I mean, let's put it this way: when he had the office built in Stamford, and this is the one that's right off Interstate 95. And you can see the great big WWF flag as you drive by it on your right.
Yeah.
Going that way, going north. And he had a gym put in that office that is second to none. I mean, it could have been Gold's Gym. I mean, it had everything, not just free weights, all the equipment, everything. I mean, and so anybody who wanted to, if you're working for the company and you're there for any reason, you want to work out in the gym, there it is. So, I mean, that's how dedicated to, looking good Vince is. And he liked that. He liked the guys with the big bodies and the, the great big physiques. But old school wrestling didn't demand that. I mean, okay, let me give you an example. You remember Buck Robley?
I know the name. I can't put a face to it.
Yeah, the Colonel Buck Robley. And Buck Robley was not only was he a great in-ring wrestler, but Bill Watts had him as the, what do you call it? The matchmaker for a while.
Oh, Booker.
The Booker for a while under him. And if you ever saw Buck, you go, I mean, he had no body and, nothing significant, and he wore long tights and, look him up, but Buck Robley. But Buck is just one example. I mean, Dick Murdoch. There's another guy, another great wrestler. But and Dick was big. He had size on him, but he never had he never looked like he came off the cover of Muscle and Fitness magazine. But great wrestler, and so that's. The era of the guys and me, I had a decent body, but I never looked like, it's like I didn't look like I came off of Muscle and Fitness magazine either. I was a great in-ring worker, performer. I had a decent body, but you would never think, and that's actually one of the things that Vince said to me when I signed with him. He says, I want you to be visible in the gym. Were
you?
Oh yeah. I worked out a lot more then than I did or have since, so.
So when you see this guy, Sean Waltman, he probably goes about 6 foot tall, maybe 180 pounds, somewhere in that neighborhood. I know that a lot of people, and this was in the Observer at the time, a lot of the people were like, what are we doing here? But you saw it and you thought of guys like Buck Robley and knew that, he didn't need to be huge, right?
Yeah. I mean, here's like, the reason I'm surprised is like, I can't believe it because, look at the size of this kid. I mean, he doesn't look like he could break an egg.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it worked.
And, to Sean's credit, man, he is a great performer. He can really go in the ring. And so I think that kind of helped make him believable too, where it's like, man, he could fly. Well, before you begin your issue with Ramon, yourself and IRS are starting a little feud with the Steiner Brothers. My plan is for us to do a full Steiner Brothers episode down the road covering this rivalry and your work with them as a manager in WCW. But for right now, I'd just love to hear your opinion of them as a team. What did you think of the Steiners when they came in here?
Oh, they were great. They were great, and they were great to work with. I mean, I think as brothers, they probably had. I mean, they're brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to end up having more issues with each other than they are anybody else. But no, I mean, not only were they both good workers, but they both have an excellent amateur background.
Yes.
Which is kind of like, made me a little more fond of them because, my dad, obviously, I mean, it's like, my dad was actually, I don't think he was ever the world champion. I have to look that up if he ever had the world championship for even a day or something. But he was the AAU National Heavyweight Wrestling Champion in 1946.
Wow.
That's amateur wrestling. That's shoot wrestling. And he was the champion in the heavyweight division.
That takes a pretty badass dude.
Oh, and he was only like 5'11", but he had a 22-inch neck.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like a bulldog, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you saw the Steiners, and you're like, yeah, I like these guys. These guys are shooters. Plus, they have a good look. Plus, good ring skills.
Yeah, good ring skills, and we worked well together. We did.
So now, rumor has it that the Steiners, and maybe we should hold this for the Steiners episode, but we'll do a little teaser. Rumor has it that the Steiners would play ribs on people pretty often, and some of them could be a little stiff. Did you ever see any of that?
Yes, I was in the locker room for a lot of that. I can't remember any one incident, but I mean, you just brought it back to my memory about them being pranksters.
Mm-hmm.
But I was fortunate not to ever be on the receiving end of it.
Because what could you do with those two guys? They'd stretch you and they'd do what they wanted anyways. but yeah, rumor has it they would duct tape people a lot and just go from there. We can maybe revisit it on the Steiner Brothers episode. All right, so Ted, the hits keep on coming for McMahon at this time as Tom Cole, the WWF ring boy, who claimed that he and other ring boys were sexually abused in proposition by WWF officials Pat Patterson, Mel Phillips, and Terry Garvin. So Tom Cole is suing the company at this time. Ted, did you ever hear much about this or witness any of these alleged behaviors?
Marcus, my right hand, and I'm a God-fearing Christian and a minister. This is the first time hearing it.
Really?
I never heard that, and I don't know how that could be. I don't know. I mean,
oh, dude,
I never had time to pick up the paper, but I mean, I would at least think somebody's going to tell me this.
you were on the road. You were a busy man, but man, it was national news at this time where this guy, I believe he was in his early 20s, and multiple other people who were working, and I think it was like some part-time announcer made a claim as well, where essentially these officials were coming to them and saying like, hey, you can advance in your job, but you got to do a little favor for me, type deal. And some of them were like getting in the ring with some of these ring boys and like working with them, but it would almost turn to like a sexual situation at times. So it turned into a really, really big deal at this time. So you never heard a word of this?
No.
Well, we can move on, but I do want to know though, at this time, is Vince seeming frazzled or phased? The ring boy controversy aside, he's got this steroid thing going on. His main draw ever, Hulk Hogan, is getting ready to leave. Did you witness Vince kind of seeming stressed out or frustrated?
No, Vince never. I don't think Vince ever would let anybody see him that way. Every time, we saw Vince, like after our initial, like making a contract and, the whole thing where you go to his office and we sign the deal and all. After that, it's like, I just recently got my nostalgia contract from the WWE, for another 2 or 3 years, whatever it is. But the only times that most of us saw Vince were at the TVs.
Okay.
And when he's at the TV, he's like this. He's thinking about nothing else but the television production, and that's what you're talking about. But I mean, did he ever seem to be more stressed than other times? And not to my, and I don't know. It was like I never knew Vince. Like I was never close enough to Vince to see the signs. If you know what I mean.
Okay.
Like you look at Vince and go, oh gosh, he looks like he's worried about something. I don't think anybody, other than his closest family, could recognize it.
I've heard that Vince is not going to sell it, whether he's stressed or not. He's just going to keep his head down and keep working. So, I mean, good for him.
Got it. And that's all any of us ever saw.
That's what it takes to be a leader.
So.
All right. Well, your rivalry with the Steiners continues into the King of the Ring, and an 8-man tag team match as Rick and Scott team up with the Smoking Guns to take on Money Inc. and the Head Shrinkers. That's our only clip this week. Let's have a gander.
Aren't those the two guys with the big brooms that walk behind all the animals? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Doubt it.
Wouldn't surprise me.
IRS made the tag, and so did Bart Gunn.
A fresh gun.
And Billy Gunn, the two lead them in the ring here.
A loaded gun.
Irish whip, far side, back body drop. Great elevation there by Billy Gunn. Caught him with a clothesline. And another clothesline. DiBiase in trouble here in this 8-man tag team event. And DiBiase waistline and drop Gunn right across the top ring cable. He hung him there. And now let's see if DiBiase can take advantage.
Welcome to the WWF, but I think the Smoking Guns deserve to be here. They came in with a bang.
Here's that $1 Million Dream.
Well, it's not the last cowboy that got hung.
$1 Million Dream by DiBiase. And Billy Gunn in trouble here. Fading into obscurity in this contest.
I'll make him feel at home. Happy trails to you.
DiBiase in the wrist in. And Billy Gunn almost out of it here.
What just happened here? He let go of the $1 Million Dream on his own. What happened?
I don't know, is that...
I think he gave up. There's been no sound for the bell.
He didn't give up. DiBiase let go of him just to rub it in.
He probably couldn't stand the smell off those jeans and those dirty cowboy boots. Is he trying to insult them?
That's what he's trying to do. He's just trying to inflict more punishment and pain. Hey, he's got the inside cradle. Yeah, get it. He got it. He got it. Billy Gunn. Oh my, there's a war breaking out.
That's what you get for being stupid. Here we go. Looks like a battle royal to me.
A war has broken out here. The Steiner Brothers and the Smoking Guns have won this 8-man tag team event.
All right, there was King of the Ring, 93.
Yeah, that's one time I would agree with Randy. That it was Stupid. What's he thinking?
Hey, so I wanted to give a shout out to Richard Land for that video. He sources a lot of these videos for us, and man, it's a great guy, and we're so glad that he could hook us up with that. But Ted, King of the Ring '93 is the it's of course best remembered as Hulk Hogan's final pay-per-view match with the WWF, but pretty underrated moment here. It's yourself and future Hall of Famer Billy Gunn locking it up in the ring. Billy is still going strong today with AEW, and incredibly, he's got a better body now than he did then, which is just wild.
Oh, wow.
What were your early impressions of Billy, and did you see his star potential?
Well, I mean, both those guys, we're pretty good workers, and obviously, they're not gonna get into a match in the ring with the other people that are in that ring with them if they're not capable. And of course, the other thing is the other deal is when you the way that you take potential stars and make them stars is put them in the ring, and expose them to the guys that have already been. I mean, that's how that's the way you learn the business. The old school way is, when I got in the ring the first, like, oh my gosh, like the first year, 2 years, I'm usually getting in the ring with somebody who's much more experienced than I am and who can lead me. So, but no, those guys were good. I didn't really know how they were going to get over when they first started, but I think they surprised everybody.
Well, and Billy Gunn certainly found his groove, eventually joining forces with DX, and that's really probably what made him a Hall of Famer. But yeah, it's you can see it. He's a big guy. He did have a cool look, and I think he just needed that little extra something to bring it out. And yeah, to your point, it's Arn Anderson always says, "Here's how you get better: is work with guys that are better than you."
Yeah,
and that's exactly what was happening there. You had a lot of experience on him, and you made him shine, and he got a win.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool. Here's an interesting note, Ted, and kind of a big element here in our podcast this week. In the June 28th edition of The Observer, Meltzer notes that you officially gave notice that you'd be leaving after SummerSlam to work as a regular for All Japan Pro Wrestling. Ted, what was going on here? Was your contract up?
Well, that was the deal, is that, the deal I had in Japan was so good. I mean, two of the biggest names ever, to say it the Japanese way, two of the biggest, gaijin means foreigner.
Mm-hmm.
Two of the biggest names that were foreign wrestlers in Japan were Stan Hansen and Bruiser Brody. And that would be for All Japan Pro Wrestling. And All Japan Pro Wrestling was the original promotion. New Japan came along later and was running and still doing business, but but the Funks by and large did a lot of the booking for All Japan Pro Wrestling for the American talent that came over. Anyway, Stan Hansen came to me one day, on a tour and said, "Brody's leaving. He's going to work for the other company." And that was at that time pretty much unheard of. I mean, I think loyalty is a big thing in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And, to jump ship and go to the other team is, it's just something that doesn't happen very often. And so that's what took place. And he says, "I'm going to need a new partner. Do you want the job?" I looked at him wide-eyed and I said, "Are you kidding?"
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I said. Hell yeah. Who wouldn't? It's kind of like he's a pig's ass pork. Yeah. Who wouldn't want that job? And so this now puts me up on another. That moves me up a notch in terms. And now I'm going to be flying back and forth in Japan, like 4 or 5, 6 times a year, and basically making my living over there. And
this would have been the time frame that you're referring to would have been 1987, right ahead of your WWF debut.
Yeah.
Right.
And and at that time, I was making $1,000 a night.
Whew. That is some damn good money.
And so if I was there on a 3-week tour, 21 days, 21 grand in cash.
Not bad at all.
No. And, sometimes I wonder if I should have stuck with that.
Well, I mean, all's well that ends well. You became a Hall of Famer by moving on to the WWF. Of course, you got that call from Bruce Pritchard while you were overseas, and man, the rest is history. And believe me, folks, we are going to be talking about Ted's days tag teaming with Stan Hansen in Japan in the 80s. But right now, I'm just curious. It's, here you've been with Vince now for whatever it is, 6 years, somewhere in that neighborhood, and you've made this name for yourself, and all of a sudden, All Japan Pro Wrestling is back on the table. Is it, had your contract expired with WWE, or was it about to expire?
It's hard for me to remember that.
Yeah.
I just, I don't know.
Well, I won't press you too hard on it, because we are asking about 30 years ago.
Yeah, but that's just, it's just hard for me to think of why. Was I still, obviously I was still wrestling, so.
You were. I'm getting the impression, just based on the notes that I read, that your contract was either expired and maybe you're just working night to night, or it was set to expire. It seemed like something like that, where you were kind enough to give your notice before jumping ship to All Japan. It's just, I don't know. I find it strange because Vince is losing folks, and he's in a really rough period. And here you are, you're a well-established heel. And Vince, you give your notice. I feel like Vince would have probably fought to keep you in the WWF at this time. Do you have any memory of that?
No. I mean, what year was it?
This is 1993. So if you remember, and we're going to cover SummerSlam on probably an episode coming up here next month. But if you recall, you go to SummerSlam with Razor Ramon, and then right after that, you're back in Japan. And I think you even win the tag team titles over there.
With Stan,
yeah, I think you're back working with Stan Hansen.
Yeah,
and then you discover, I think you spoke to your doctor or something after you were having some trouble. You discover the injury, and then you retire.
Yes, that's exactly right. Because I just told him I can't do it. I called my wife and I told her. And the thing that was great, and this is Giant Baba. And this is why I so respected him and his company, and I had only been there for 3 days or 4 days when I told him I've got to go home.
Wow,
I can't deal with it anymore. And so when he paid me, he didn't pay me for 3 or 4 days. He paid me for the whole tour.
Were you back on the old deal that you had with Stan Hansen here in '93? This $1,000 a night situation?
Yeah.
Whew, what a good guy.
Yeah.
What a good guy hooking you up like that.
So,
well, it's a shame, the end of your Hall of Fame in-ring career, but of course, you continue as a manager and create a new legacy that way. I do want to mention, though, that rumor has it you were eyeing WCW also before making the jump over to All Japan. And Meltzer reported that prior to your deal with Japan, you attempted to get a $250,000 a year deal done with WCW. Is there any truth to that, or is somebody telling Meltzer stories?
There may be truth to that.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, because if I'm gonna go to work for another company, I'm not gonna leave the deal. Obviously with Vince, I wasn't on a guarantee. But the deal, the Japan deal was a guarantee. I mean, it's like, I was making $1,000 a night. So if I'm going on a 5-week tour, how much is that?
That's an awful lot of money.
Yeah. How many days? Like there's 7 days, like 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. That's 35 grand.
Whew.
A 5-week tour would be, 35 days. That's 35 grand.
But so you negotiated with WCW, kind of saying like, "Hey, look, yeah, I've got all this money on the table at Japan, or I could stay home and make some guaranteed money from WCW."
Yeah.
But apparently they didn't go for it. Which honestly, what a huge mistake on WCW's part at this time.
Yeah.
Obviously nobody knew about your lingering injury, but like the idea that they could have landed the $1 Million Man in their company at that time when they needed some help, they probably should have pulled the trigger.
Well, and but I did end up over there for a little while, didn't I?
You eventually made your way over to WCW as a manager. Again, that's coming next month too. We got some big anniversaries next month. We've got this report from the June 28th Observer. The tag team title changed hands 2 more times this past week, with Money Inc. regaining the belts from the Steiners on 6/16 in Rockford, Illinois, and the Steiners winning them back on 6/19 in St. Louis when Scott gave Ted DiBiase the Frankensteiner. The original title change in Columbus, Ohio wasn't taped for television, even though it was at a taping. So, Ted, I know that Vince liked doing switches at the house shows to create the perception that fans need to attend because anything can happen. But why do you think the multiple switches in just such a short period of time? It's just sort of weird, uncharacteristic, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't, and I don't know.
I had a feeling you wouldn't know the behind the scenes, like why Vince would do something like that.
Yeah,
I just thought it was strange.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of thought it was strange too, but you do what you're told.
That's it. Well, here's another interesting note from the next edition of the Observer as Hogan finishes some of his final live events in America before his departure. Hogan's WWF career went out like a lamb. Hogan worked before crowds of 3,800 and 3,500 in Chicago and Boston, respectively. In both cases, Hogan didn't seem to be taking matters seriously. In Chicago, Hogan brought Horace Grant of the Chicago Bulls into the ring from the crowd and let him pin Ted DiBiase to signal the end of the tag team match. The next night in Boston, during a tag match, while Brutus Beefcake was in the ring battling Money Inc., Hogan jumped off the apron and began a conversation with some ringside fans instead of acting like he was heavily involved in the match. So I think that's pretty interesting, Ted. Horace Grant had just won the NBA championship series as a member of the Bulls on June 20th. And here he is like a week or so later pinning you in the ring. Do you have any memory of this?
Well, yeah, but obviously, pinning me, he didn't do anything. He just came in the ring and covered me. I was already there.
Right.
It's kind of like, and I wouldn't have agreed to anything else.
No, because this guy is not a wrestler, and he's an athlete, but he's not a wrestler, for crying out loud. So you don't want to be putting this guy over like he's beating your ass.
And of course, that's a big pop for the crowd.
Yeah,
I mean, because they all knew who he was. So I mean, I thought it was pretty cool.
I mean, wild. This guy just became the champion in the NBA like literally a week before this, and then he's in there with you. It's pretty awesome. What were your impressions of Hogan's final dates with the company, though? I mean, did you get any sense that he was kind of phoning it in with sort of the silly shtick, or is this common house show stuff?
No, it was not common. It was like, he was acting a little different. Kind of like leaning over and whispering in Mike's ear, like, "What's he doing?"
Yeah. It's in Hogan's defense, it's like you're wrapping up kind of your final dates. You're obligated to go and do this stuff, but it's like, hey man, I'm about to go make a bunch of money in Hollywood. If I break my leg right now, that could really screw with things. So why not have a little fun instead?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I had no problem with any of it. I thought it was. I mean, even if he wasn't leaving, I mean, it's like you got another celebrity in the house watching you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Hulk does his move, drops the leg, and I'm just there and calls the other guy in to cover me, and everybody popped. So yeah, it was. I mean, if he wasn't leaving, I would still, if he suggested it, I'll do it.
I mean, honestly, that kind of thing would be good on national TV too.
Yeah.
It's Horace Grant just won the NBA championship. It's awesome. So following Hogan's departure, Vince is clearly on the hunt for a new Superman as his flag bearer, and it appears that he lands on Lex Luger. July 4th, 1993, Luger body slammed Yokozuna on the USS Intrepid after flying in on a helicopter. Ted, what did you think when it came to the idea of positioning Lex Luger in this role?
Well, I love Lex, but I just, it's kind of like, I don't know if he's ready for it. I mean, obviously he's got that look. I mean, this guy's, you know, uh, huge, great, unbelievable physique, which, like I said before, Vince was, that's what he was crazy about, was those great bodies. I said, but, a great body is one thing and a great look is one thing, but, I didn't know if Lex Luger had the know-how of carrying the belt, so.
Right.
And, I love Lex. I wouldn't have done that at that time.
Yeah, it's I've heard that Lex is a great guy, and certainly like his look, his physique, just picture perfect for professional wrestling. However, I have also heard that he's just green as grass, and like even at that stage where he'd been in wrestling for a while, just maybe wasn't ready for it, and that proved out because Vince clearly planned to anoint this guy, but as it turns out, he never wound up winning the WWF championship. So I think Vince started to see the light after giving it a shot with Lex there for a while.
Yeah.
So Ted, as we roll into July of '93, a lot of things are changing fast. Namely, the biggest names of the golden era of wrestling are all either gone or on their way out the door here in the WWF. Hogan is gone. You're about to depart from the company and go back to Japan. Hacksaw is wrapping up. Jake and Warrior had both left the year prior, and the list goes on and on. So, as you're getting ready to depart and kind of this company that you've helped to build to the point that it's at, do you have confidence that, this new crop of talent that they're going to call the new generation are going to be able to fill the shoes of you guys? As a reminder, the WWF still had The Undertaker, Bret Hart, Lex Luger, Shawn Michaels, Yokozuna, Razor Ramon, and Diesel had just come into the company. So, we know with the benefit of hindsight that, how things would turn out. But at the time, did you see a guy on the roster that could fill the void left behind by yourself and the other members of the golden era?
Yeah, maybe a couple guys. I consider Bret Hart, my era.
Yeah.
He might have been a little bit, but I mean, again, and Bret Hart was very good. He was a great champion. And why? I mean, he grew up in the wrestling business. His father was a promoter of the Calgary territory.
Yes.
And so, I mean, there's another second generation wrestler who loved the business and did very well. I mean, Lex was good on the microphone. Lex had a tremendous body, but he wasn't the greatest, technician in the ring. He was a guy that that needed to be led, but I give him credit for being as good as he was.
Yeah, for sure. And it's when you see a guy like Bret Hart, who's like, yep, he's got all of the technical skills, maybe not super polished on the mic, but he's still pretty good. When you see him and all of a sudden it's like, okay, he's becoming the guy. It's like, man, this is a very, very different dude than the model that had been working, like these giant muscle bound guys. I mean, you see Bret Hart, are you like, okay, I can see him carrying the banner, or were you a little skeptical?
Well, I wasn't skeptical because I knew his background, and and Bret and I only had a couple of opportunities to wrestle each other, and we had great matches. And that's the other thing about Bret. Bret could lead you. Bret could have and go out there and have a great match. And I think that's maybe, I don't know, maybe that's what Vince began to see and understand, is that just because you put a great big muscle head in the ring doesn't mean that he's a great wrestler. And I was a big guy, but I had a decent body, but I was never a musclehead, which is obvious.
Well, Vince was ready to go with Bret Hart. However, the next year at around this time, Vince would put his full support behind Diesel. So as a reminder, Kevin Nash had just come into the company in June of '93, so a month prior to what we're talking about here. And this is right in the middle of that steroid controversy, and Kevin Nash is huge and he's clean. He's not using steroids. And Vince was allegedly immediately infatuated with his size. Whenever you first meet Kevin Nash here, because I assume this is the first time you've crossed paths with him, did you see superstar potential?
Personally, at the time, I did not. And again, that was my thing. So here's a great big body, and it's we all have egos, and especially, you couldn't be Vince McMahon and not have an ego.
Right.
You got to believe in yourself and believe what you're doing. And I think Vince had this thing where, watch me, I can make a star out of anybody. And I don't know, but it was with Kevin. It took a little while, but he got there.
He did, and really, it was more with the NWO down the road. I think is when his he really took off. Like, yep, he got to be the champion and enjoy all of those perks.
See, but again, what you're talking about, you said down the road. Well, during that time, he was having the opportunity to get better and better by way of the guys he was getting in the ring with that were helping him become that guy.
Yes, exactly. And Kevin Nash to this day credits saying like, hey, I was ringside as a bodyguard for Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon night after night after night. And he was like, and I learned just by standing ringside and watching them.
Exactly. And he picked it up and carried the torch.
Well, another young talent at the time is a guy we discussed at length on episode 10, and that's the 1-2-3 Kid. After teasing Razor Ramon about losing the Kid in June, you'd take him on in early July. We talked about it lately on the last episode, but let's watch back the fallout from that and Vince making you watch back the result of the match.
Gentlemen, more Monday Night Raw. What action we have here this week? Talk about action. That would take us, by the way, to Wrestling Challenge this past weekend, which we're going to talk about. The matchup between Ted DiBiase and the 1-2-3 Kid. On the line right now, I believe. Ted DiBiase, are you there?
I'm here.
Well, Ted DiBiase, you can't be too pleased as to the outcome of the matchup with you and the 1-2-3 Kid this past weekend.
Pleased, upset McMahon is not even the word to describe how I'm feeling right now. And it's not that snot-nosed 1-2-3 Kid I'm upset with. I was wiping the mat with him. It's that no good stinking Razor Ramon coming out there and sticking his nose in my business. He will pay for that, McMahon. I guarantee you he'll pay for that.
All right, well, stay with us if you would, because we're going to take you back right now to footage from this past weekend.
What? You're going to do what?
We're going to show the foot.
No, I wouldn't show that.
No, McMahon, you can't show that footage.
No, I'm told we let's roll the footage.
No, don't roll.
McMahon,
He doesn't want you to roll it.
If you show that footage, McMahon, I'm hanging up.
Teddy, don't hang up. This is Bobby. Don't hang up, Teddy.
All right, let's take you back to this past weekend. It's Wrestling Challenge. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. 1-2-3 Kid versus Ted DiBiase.
Hello. Sometimes you can feel a man grab you. You can just tell by moving your arm or your leg that his strength isn't there anymore.
Hey, wait a minute. Look who's coming down the aisle.
Razor Ramon!
Razor Ramon making his way to the ring. Man, this could be a volatile situation.
This could be the end of the 1-2-3 Kid. Oh, Mommy, Daddy, please come help me. They're going to tear me apart.
Oh, please stop that. That could be the end of the $1 Million Man. If Razor Ramon gets his hands on DiBiase,
well, see, Razor being beaten twice by the Kid gives us all a black eye.
what do you mean gives us all a black eye?
Razor is a friend of ours. Then he lets this Kid beat him. I mean, it makes us all look bad.
Well, DiBiase has dominated the 1-2-3 Kid. And DiBiase's really rubbing it in. And the Kid got a shoulder. He got the arm top. He got it. Oh, my God, no. The 1-2-3 Kid has beat DiBiase.
I can't believe this.
The 1-2-3 Kid has beat DiBiase. Razor Ramon is laughing at the $1 Million Man.
What a
That was a blast.
Oh yeah, it was, and I loved it too. I loved it. And to the kid's credit, I mean, he went on to, I mean, you know, I mean, everybody, it's like if, everybody knew that, Vince liked guys with big bodies and a lot of muscles, but he also, I mean, as time went on, I think, he even changed a little bit. Now look at the 1-2-3 kid, but again, the way that whole thing was set up and the way that we did it, it helped make the kid for sure.
Absolutely. And it's cool hearing you say that, because I think that a lot of guys, and certainly guys from your generation, I've heard a lot of them say over the years, like, oh, well, you got to be careful taking a pinfall loss on TV, and like, oh man, you want to make it almost like a slip on a banana peel type finish if this guy's going to get you. I hear that a lot from guys from your generation, but really what's great about what you just said is your focus is on, yep, I got him over for that, and
Yeah.
that's really kind of the art of being the heel, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And again, because of the way that it was done, I mean, it didn't hurt me. It didn't take any heat off of me, because of the way it was done. The little confrontation with Razor, which, would set up a future match. And then the way that, I mean, it's like, it's obvious to everybody in the crowd that the kid is beat. And I'm being like a jerk, right? Like, you'll see how easy this is. And then he hooks me, and you couldn't have done it any better. I mean, in terms of a pop, and even when it was laid out, I said, this is going to be great. They are going to pop. And they did.
They did, and it was a great setup for you and Razor, because he was kind of like the culprit that helped Kid get the win. So perfect setup for SummerSlam. The 1-2-3 Kid here, he's working a very unique style, kind of a little bit more high flying. Guys like him and Shawn Michaels are kind of setting a new standard in pro wrestling, and it's a standard that along with Lucha Libre would kind of influence what wrestling today has become. So at the time, what did you think of his work?
Well, I liked it. I mean, and everything changes. It even me. I mean, it's kind of like if you were to watch, have watched my father's era of pro wrestling. Wow. I mean, you talk about a lot more, a lot less action. I mean, a high spot was called a high spot because most of the time they were down on the mat.
Oh, okay.
And you didn't see nearly the number of high spots in the match, and like Dory Funk Sr. and Iron Mike DiBiase. And it's amazing that those two guys were able to hold the attention of the crowd for 3 hours and 20 minutes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. But what made it believable was the way they worked it. I mean, and you talk about it was a work, but they legitimately, both guys agreed ahead of time to take a shot. I mean, it's like, if you want to slice somebody open, it's a downhill punch, over the eyebrow, and again, they had pictures of both of them the next day in the paper, and they were bruised up. All of that, for the love of wrestling, to maybe like get those doubters out there, like, wow, these guys really went for it. So anyway,
and yes, the 1-2-3 Kid had a different style. However, he was doing some really cool, phenomenal, interesting looking moves, but there was a lot of emphasis on selling from him, as the smaller baby face, and that's how you get sympathy. And then those moves that you do mean a lot more.
That's just it. That it's kind of like the match is going to be. The match is only as good as the guy who does the sell job, and how well he sells, how believably he sells. because the sell job, you're selling yourself, you're being beat up, what have you, and it's like that's all setting up and building to that point in the match where he makes a comeback. And the less of a sell job you do, the less response you're going to get from the crowd on a comeback. Because if there's very little selling, then there's again, the comeback is only as good as a sell job. Put it that way.
Man, he was always great at it. So was Shawn Michaels. Ricky Morton was never a big guy, but he was a great seller. So it's it shows those guys got over.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about Scott Hall a little bit on the show before, but at this time he's still pretty young, and he's really starting to hit a groove here as Razor Ramon. What can you tell us about your thoughts on his ring work and persona here?
I think that again, he's a young guy who had a lot of potential, and the one thing I always stress is, and just like Junkyard Dog was not a great in-ring technician, but Junkyard Dog had charisma come out of his ears.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't teach charisma to anybody. You either have it or you don't. And you can go out there and you can work a perfect match, all the moves and all of that stuff. But if the sell job isn't what it should be, if you don't have that it factor, then it's blah. It's yeah.
And you felt that Scott had that kind of.
Oh yeah. He that's the one thing he had from the get-go was the charisma. Just like him, like the whole Razor Room, the way he put it over was great.
Ted, did you ever see the movie Scarface?
Yes. and that's what I thought of.
Scott has said he got into the meeting with Vince and he started doing his Tony Montana impression. Yeah. And that's all she wrote. He was and it's funny because he's got the razors on his tights and stuff, and back in the day you chop up cocaine with a razor, so it's like he's kind of like a Cuban drug dealer, I guess. We have heard over the years that Scott could at times rub people the wrong way. Now look, I've met Scott in the past and he was a really nice person, but I've heard that when he was under the influence he could rub people the wrong way. Did you always get along well with Scott?
I never had an issue with Scott. He and I always got along. I think there was just, I respected him. He was a new young guy. I mean, like Kevin was basically based on, my time in the business was a young guy.
Mm-hmm.
And both those guys went on to be big stars. So, and I mean, I think that it's kind of like, I guess the one feeling would be like when they first showed up on the steam, it was kind of like showed up on the scene. It was like some guys thought that they had kind of an attitude.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and that's not a good thing to bring if you're trying to get over with everybody, because you realize that all those guys that you're putting your nose up to are guys you're going to have to get in the ring with and make a living with. So,
right, and you've got to stick your chin out for these guys and trust them to not hurt you.
Yeah.
So, well, another interesting note at this time is that Jim Cornette comes into the WWF along with the Heavenly Bodies, and he becomes a new spokesperson, manager for Yokozuna. Cornette is not a name I see us discussing very often here on the show, but everybody seems to have a story about him. Wondering if you do or what your experiences with him were like.
Oh gosh, Jim Cornette, you talk about, I mean, I don't know if he talked more on TV or off the TV, but I mean, I thought he was a great manager. I never had an issue with him. I never did.
Well, you're one of the rare exceptions. It sounds like, just basically anybody who gets in his stratosphere eventually gets crossways with him at some time or another. But yeah, some of the stories I've heard, man, great manager and hell of a personality, great talker, but man, he could be a little volatile from what I've been told.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like I just, I pretty much kept to myself.
Always a safe bet. Well, SummerSlam arrives on August 30th, and it would mark your final televised match with the WWF. I know you were getting ready to depart for Japan here, but if somebody had told you at the time that this was going to be your last match as the $1 Million Man, do you think you would have believed it?
I'm not sure. This. Do we have that match?
Yes, sir. I've got the final moments of it here coming up for our next clip.
Okay, let's look at it and then we'll talk about it.
All right.
Ted DiBiase cinching up Razor. What's he going to do now? Oh, yeah, neckbreaker.
He's getting ready for that $1 million dream.
Ted DiBiase, perhaps with a bit of revenge, considering DiBiase's loss to the 1-2-3 Kid, which you say he credits Razor Ramon with. Up goes Razor Ramon for the suplex.
Do it, Teddy. He's yours. You own him. Here we go.
Here it comes.
Oh, yeah.
DiBiase getting set for the $1 million dream. No, Razor counters with an elbow. DiBiase still the aggressor. Trying to set up Razor now. Back to his feet. Reversal. DiBiase coming off the rope. Clothesline. But Razor himself goes down. Both men down.
I don't think Razor's got it anymore.
DiBiase has taken a great deal out of Razor Ramon. A hard-fought matchup here. Our very first matchup at SummerSlam. Look out to the buckle. Yes. Razor Ramon to the outside.
Taking the coward's way out, may I add.
Beg your pardon?
Come on, Teddy.
Wait a minute, look at this. DiBiase, while the official's back is turned to Ted DiBiase, DiBiase has loosened the corner pad. He stripped the corner pad from the corner, exposing that steel ring. And Razor Ramon has no idea what's in store for him. Razor Ramon to the buckle. No! No! What a reversal!
Not the Razor's edge! No!
Up across the back! Look at that, ladies and gentlemen! That's unbelievable!
Teddy, no!
To the camera! Razor Ramon hooks the leg!
Here goes! Look at that!
There it was.
That's awesome.
Your final match as the $1 Million Man.
Yeah, and couldn't have been with a better guy.
Yeah, I mean, that's a Hall of Famer that's pinning your shoulders to the mat there. So pretty cool.
Yeah, he was. I know that like some people had issues with him, and he might rub somebody the wrong way, but I never had an issue with him. I mean, it's kind of like business is business, and it's kind of like or that old deal like you want me to put that guy over. I mean, hey, look, I'm here. That's what you do. That's your job, especially as a heel. And we had a good enough match where I lost that match, but it did in terms of hurting my credibility, it didn't at all.
Right.
And that's because we had a great match.
You had him in trouble, and you wanted to go for the cheap way out with taking the pad off the turnbuckle, and it backfired on you. It's a good story.
Yeah, it's all how it's done. So
absolutely. Oh, one of the things that stuck out to me here is that Scott, when he had you up in that Razor's Edge, before he dropped you, he dropped to his knees before planting you at the finish and gave you a really nice kind of gentle landing. So I know that you had been dealing with back issues earlier in '93, and you're about to head over to Japan and get that injury that would end your career. But do you recall being banged up at this point?
Well, I don't recall it. I mean, it's like, getting hurt in wrestling is like a part of life. There's going to be times where you're going to have some kind of injury, I didn't, I didn't I didn't foresee that as a huge issue at the time.
Well, wrapping up here with the company that turned you from a wrestler and a well-respected wrestler into a megastar, like a legitimate part of pop culture.
Yeah.
Is it like bittersweet getting out of this?
Yeah, it's the whole thing about going back to Japan was kind of like I needed more time at home.
Yes.
What year was this?
This was 93. So what you had told me before was that around WrestleMania 9, which had been in whatever March or April of 93, that's when the issues had started at home, and now you were ready to get off the road, correct?
Yeah. And that was the deal. That was the whole. And again, I had this conversation with Vince. I said, Vince, I don't want to go. I said, but to save my marriage, I think this is what I need to do, because I can go to Japan and I can be there a couple of weeks, but when I'm home, I'm home.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just home for a couple of days and then gone again. I'm home. I'm home for like a month or 2 months, and then I go back to Japan. And he totally understood. There was no issue there. So I didn't leave the company with any, you know what I'm saying, hard feelings.
Okay, guys, let's take a quick break to talk about taking care of some serious business. And I'm talking about taking care of business in the bedroom. And if you're trying to take care of business, you need to try Blue Chew. Guys, let's just take a minute to talk about sex. You remember back in the day when you were always ready to go? Well, with a little help from Blue Chew, you can get that thing so hard you can take it hunting. It's going to help increase your performance and regain that old confidence in bed. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable tablets and at a fraction of the cost. You can take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready when the opportunity arises. The process is simple. Sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. And you want to know the best part? It's all done online. No awkward visits to the doctor's office, no weird conversations, no waiting in line at the pharmacy anymore. Blue Chew's tablets are made right here in the USA and prepared and shipped direct to your door in a discreet package, but of course there will be nothing discreet about your package. Look, guys, I ordinarily like to try things before I make any kind of a commitment, because you want to find out, is this actually going to work? Will it work for me? Well, that's got to be the best part of this whole thing. With our deal, you can try it for a month for free. All you have to do is pay $5 shipping. This whole time, you and your partner may have been having the best sex of your whole life and been missing out on it without even knowing. So why not just give Blue Chew a shot? Just find out. When you can get it for a month for free with only $5 shipping, it's silly not to just give it a try. Women are attracted to confidence, and Blue Chew can help to give you confidence where it counts the very most. Don't wait any longer. Let's chew it and do it. Take advantage of our special deal. Again, you can try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code EGAP at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com, promo code EGAP, and receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. And how did your wife feel about you? I mean, because you're getting off the pirate ship here with the WWF and getting yourself out of that position. But now it's like, okay, honey, I'm packing my bags and I'm off to Japan. Like, did she have an issue with that, or was she just happy that you weren't going to be constantly on the road?
Well, she was happy that I wasn't going to be constantly on the road. At this time, it's like at that time, it's like now. I mean, if the WWE was then what it is now, and I was only on the road 4 days a week, I mean, she'd have been fine with that. But that wasn't the case then. This is still when we're out going. I don't know. I think that there was a point where at one point it was kind of like we would have 10 days on and 3 days off, and then we'd go 4 days on and 3 days off. But again, that's still 6 days. 6 days a month that you're home.
Yes.
So it's not much.
That's a lot to ask of a significant other, especially with children at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, WWF Magazine acknowledged your departure saying that you left to pursue other endeavors. They also claim that you lost much of your wealth due to bad investments, and Meltzer, which is just incredible. Meltzer speculates that the claim was paving the way for an eventual face turn if you ever decide to come back to the company. When you're leaving the company here, does Vince talk to you about, hey, the door is always open, like one of those type conversations?
Well, I mean, yeah, and he did say, yeah, the door was always open. I knew that I could, come back. And I didn't. And again, there was no, there were no hard feelings at the time. I mean, I was very grateful for what and like you said it. I mean, this, and I, happened to be in that era. Those one of those guys between the mid '80s and mid '90s, and it's, here I am, Marcus, and I'm about to turn 70, and they're still making new action figures. Like I've got a new Funko Pop out. I mean, are you kidding? I mean, I don't know. Lucky to be in that era.
You certainly did something right. If they're still making action figures of you, you're still doing the autograph signings. Like, man, you nailed it.
Yeah. So.
Well, you didn't waste any time following SummerSlam. On 9/3, you're in Budokan Hall wrestling your first match for All Japan since 1987, and you would win the PWF World and International Tag Team titles with your old pal Stan Hansen, defeating Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao. I've got video of your entrance with Stan, which I included because of this incredible reaction that we're about to see. And we've also got the final moments of the match. It's all in Japanese, so I'm going to narrate it for our listening audience. All right, so we're getting a look inside of the arena right now. And it is a jam-packed house. There are your opponents backstage. Stretching out. And now they've got you backstage with Stan. And you are decked out in your vest and your chaps. Lights go out in the arena. These fans are ready. Listen to that reaction for your entrance music with Stan. Here we go. You and Stan come running into the ring. Stan does not give a single shit. He's waving that that rope around. Does not care who he hits. All right, we flashed ahead here to the final minutes of the match. You're holding the guy for Stan Hansen, but he puts up the boot, catches Hansen with it. He's fighting his way out. You get him with the double axe handle from behind and hit him with an atomic drop. There's the clothesline from Stan. You block his partner. And there's the finish. Yourself and Stan win those PWF World and International Tag Team titles in your first match back with Japan after a 6-year absence. Stan hasn't done yet. He's still wailing on people outside the ring.
Hey, I tease Stan. I mean, I was his partner. And when we would go to the ring, and he's swinging that rope, and that thing and everything, and it's kind of like, and it sounds crazy, but the fans would actually, it's almost like they wanted to get hit by the rope or something. It was just crazy, but I was kind of like, I'm his partner, and without his glasses on, he can hardly see, and like I'd hold a guy up, for him to. Give him the big lariat, and like he'd hit us both. But no, it was good though. It was a great time.
Man, I want to put it in context for our listeners right now. 4 days. That's it. 4 days before this, you were at SummerSlam facing Razor Ramon, and you're wearing all your $1 Million Man gear, and you're that character that we had all become familiar with over 6 years.
Yeah.
4 days later, you're in Japan, and you are, I mean, it's badass. You are dressed in that cowboy gear with the chaps and the vest, and you look like you just transformed right back to the Ted DiBiase of 1987. Just absolutely incredible. How did it feel getting back to Japan in front of that audience?
It was, I loved it. I mean, it was great. It really was.
Man, it's so cool to see. And like, here's the other thing, and this is something I wanted to ask you about ever since I watched that video was, I hear all the time that traditionally Japanese audiences are quiet, respectful, tend to not make very much noise during matches. But like your entrance and then the finish of that, the roof came off the place.
Yeah.
Is that pretty atypical when it comes to Japanese or wrestling in Japan?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like when I first went to Japan, it was very unusual because the fans, you do something really big and they would go ooh, or, like that, but you didn't have that. But over time, the fans in Japan seemed to morph into just like the fans in the United States. It's kind of like it changed. They changed. And and again, that we love that as well. So it wasn't always like that, but I mean, over the time, it's kind of like now they're going to yell and scream and holler too. So,
I wonder if it's as Vince's international footprint began to expand and, WWF was being seen in more and more countries, maybe these foreign audiences were seeing the giant reactions on TV and, they start to get into it themselves.
Well, and it could be, and it's like, it was kind of like though, Japan is one of those places that, I mean, the wrestling, there were two All Japan Pro Wrestling and New Japan Pro Wrestling. And the reason that I ended up being Stan's partner is like Stan and Bruiser Brody were partners in All Japan, and they were two of the hugest names, and I'm sorry, as far as foreign wrestlers, that came over to Japan.
Yeah.
And when Bruiser jumped and went over to the other company, which that's also very unusual, like loyalty is a big thing over there. Was big news, and so that's when Stan came to me and he says, "I need a new partner." He says, "Do you want the job?" And I said, "Absolutely." And that's when I became the partner and donned the chaps and the whole deal. It was great.
Huge opportunity in 1987, and now that opportunity is back. And you had mentioned before that you were making really incredible money back in 87, and now that offer is back on the table. So I mean, here you are back here in front of these really hot audiences who missed you apparently for 6 years, and man, couldn't be much better.
And that was and I think I made it clear to Vince when I left that I wasn't leaving because I was unhappy or anything, but it was more about I've got to get my personal life right, and this is something I have to do for that reason. I need to be home more.
And here you are with an opportunity to make some fantastic money with less states. I mean, it'd be nuts not to take it.
Yeah.
Well, you're working here for quite a few days right out of the gate, and on 9/7, yourself and Stan would defeat your old pal and tag team partner Steve Williams, along with Tracy Smothers. Tracy is not a name, much like Cornette, that I foresee us discussing here very often. Any memories of him or working against him in Doc at this time?
I remember Tracy, but I mean, to me, him and Steve Williams, Steve Williams is the star.
Yes.
He's the star, and Tracy was good, but I mean, it was like, I don't think that, Tracy never had a legendary name, I guess.
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, awesome guy and well respected, but yeah, you're right. Doc was the star. And by the way, all of the expectations that everybody seemed to have for Doc here in America, like Vince got him way too late, but it was expected that Doc was going to be this giant star here in America. Well, he was a giant star, but it was just over in Japan. He was huge, huge
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah.
So Ted, right in the middle of this tour to All Japan or return to All Japan, you jump back to the U.S. and you actually take on Steve Keirn in a losing effort on 924 with an indie promotion. It's also reported that WCW has reopened contract discussions with you during this time, but ultimately they couldn't match your asking price. So, it's interesting here because, in my mind, I was like, oh, okay, so Ted signed this contract with All Japan, so now he's back there. But I don't know, was it a contract? Was it a handshake agreement? Because it seems like, if you're free to negotiate and work for other promotions, then maybe you didn't sign something.
Well, it was well, in Japan, there was never a signed contract. It was all, a handshake.
Gotcha.
Never had a signed contract in Japan ever.
Well, it's that all makes sense because I was like, man, he's bouncing back and forth and probably getting nice paydays on the indie scene here in America too. So like, hey, good for you, man. Following the WWF, there was no slowing you down.
You're helping me because it's kind of like as we're talking about this stuff, I'm trying and I'm going, oh yeah, okay, I remember it. I remember it as you're giving it to me. It's like, but I know there somewhere like at 93 and 94, it's all going to stop.
It's about to stop here in November. We're about to get there soon, but but before we do, your next Japan tour starts on 9/29, and between there and November, yourself and Stan are doing both traditional tag team and 6-man tag matches with Kendall Windham, Dan Spivey, and Joel Deaton as teammates. This whole period has got to feel like an absolute blur to you, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, all that back and forth and the plane trips and making towns once you get back to the United States. It's holy smokes, keep him busy.
I don't, and I guess I'm trying to remember. I mean, when I went back to Japan, Japan was the main deal, and I can't remember. Did I make a lot of independent appearances when I came back?
Well, so your career didn't have much time left, so you were making indie dates whenever like your tour would end in Japan. You'd be there for like a week or 2 weeks or something, and then you'd jump back over to the United States, and you'd have a date or two while you were back in the U.S. that you would make. And I assume you're staying with your family and getting some relaxation in between, and then you're back off to Japan. So, I mean, you were still keeping pretty darn busy here.
Okay.
Here's to me one of the coolest parts of doing this research is on 10/28 you're back in the States again, and it's a really cool nostalgic show that you get to be part of, and it's right here at the end of your career. Your career is about to end the next month, and incredibly you get this really cool bookend. Terry Funk is running a show in Amarillo called the High Country Chevy Free for All, and you get to be part of it on that. And some of the other participants on that card are Dory Funk with teaming up with Dick Murdoch. Terry Funk is taking on Eddie Gilbert in a Texas death match. Boss Man is facing your teammate there from Japan, Stan Hansen, and you are facing your old tag team partner Tito Santana, and you get a win by countout. Then 2 days later, you're going to defeat Terry Funk himself by count out in Bensalem, Pennsylvania at the NWA Bash. So, I mean, here you are right at the end of your career, and you get to revisit some of the people who shaped your career along the way in some of your final matches.
Marcus, as you're saying this, I'm remembering it.
You are?
Yeah. You're bringing back memories that I was like, wow. I until you said it, I went, I forgot. But you're doing all this work, buddy, and man, you're bringing back my home now. Now I remember. But I knew for sure that between 93 and 94, somewhere in there is when I retired.
Yes, and it's coming up really soon. But man, it's just that really jumped off the page to me.
And largely, I think due to the the neck injury.
Yes,
if I'm
and
not mistaken. Yeah.
that part is coming up here quickly. But man, it's
Mhm.
just how cool is it that you've only got a couple matches left in your entire career, and one of your final ones is against Terry Funk, who you've named as being really instrumental in your career.
Yeah. And I do remember that. And what a way to go out, because here's a guy, not only him, but his brother as well. But Terry more than anybody, I guess, was mentored me. I mean, like when anytime I had a question about anything that was wrestling related, I always went to Terry. Because, yeah, I mean, Dory and his brother, Dory Jr., is, I mean, every bit as good as he is. The difference was Dory Jr. always, you talk about a technician in the ring. Oh, my gosh. Go watch some of the matches that Dory Funk Jr. had with Jack Briscoe. Oh, my gosh. I mean, I was totally, I knew I wasn't a mark at all. I mean, I grew up in the wrestling business and I knew what it was. But they had matches where I was jumping out of my chair with excitement. But Terry could do that, but Terry could do it all. Terry could be a scientific on the mat wrestler, or he could be the wildest orangutan in the building. And he did it all very, very, very well.
As he got older, so he was in his 50s, 60s, and he's doing moonsaults off of ladders and going through tables and barbed wire. When you're seeing this out of your one of the guys who was so influential in your career, are you like, what is he doing, or what did you think?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was like, I'm just kind of like, Terry, really? I mean, it's like, I mean, I never had an opportunity to tell him, "Hey, slow down, man." It's like, and again, like I said, I am 6 months away from the big 70. I will be 70 years old, and that means that Terry is now like what 80, 87, 88, maybe.
He's around there, yeah.
Yeah, and so just. Yeah, I mean, that was just it. Terry, he could do it all, and it didn't matter how old he was, he could still do it all.
I mean, it was like 95. He was in Japan with Cactus Jack, and they were doing like these explosive death matches, where you'd hit the board of barbed wire and the thing explodes, and he's getting third-degree burns. It's like, oh my God, what is he doing?
Yeah, I know.
Hey, good for him.
And again, there's the difference. There's the there's the difference between Terry and his brother. But again, the other thing is Dory Jr. is still alive and going. I don't think he's but a couple of years older than Terry. But I'm trying to think. I saw him at like the. Like a Hall of Fame event that was held up in Albany. It was maybe a year or so ago, and I sat and had dinner with him and his wife, and and he's as sharp as a tack.
Man, what a legendary family of guys! I'm sure we'll discuss the Funks at length here on the podcast. And let's get to the kind of the finale of your in-ring career here. Coinciding with tradition, yourself and Hansen would vacate your PWF tag team titles for a tag team tournament, which would open on 11/13. In the first round, you and Hansen would defeat Tracy Smothers and Richard Slinger. And the next night, on 11/15, you defeat Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kamala II. The 11/29 edition of The Observer had this to say. Ted DiBiase suffered a neck injury early in the tag tournament, severe enough to be sent home and be out for the rest of the year. Giant Baba will take his place as Stan Hansen's partner for the rest of the tour, although Stan had to give up the 2 points he and Ted had won. So this, of course, would be the injury that would end your in-ring career.
Yeah.
Ted, do you recall if that injury was suffered in the match with Abdullah and Giant Kamala?
Well, no, this is something that was, it wasn't just, it was kind of like this, I was worried about this anyway. I mean, I started having this numbness in my, in my left arm, and I didn't know what it was coming from. And So I go and see a doctor, and basically, I mean, he tells me, he says, you've got a disc issue. And he says, what we need to do is, the way we fix this is we take back then they would take a bone chip from your hip and put that in there and then fuse it together. And I hadn't had this is before I had any surgery. And, but I felt obligated to go back to Japan, because, Giant Baba had been so good to me, and the whole tag team tournament thing and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told my wife, I said, this will be it. And so, but it was, I only got through a couple of days of that tour and realized I can't keep going.
Yeah.
And that's what I told Giant Baba. And, I said, I apologize. I said, you guys have been so good to me. And I said, I just had to come back and try. And he totally understood. And the other thing that absolutely amazed me is, like, this was like a 3-week tour, and I was only like 4 or 5 days into it.
Yeah.
And he says, I'll be at the hotel and pay you tomorrow. He paid me for the whole tour.
Incredible.
And brother, I was making $1,000 a night.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. And that's what I said. He paid me for the whole tour. He said, thank you so very much. And he understood, because he had the same thing, the deal with the disc in his neck. And, so I didn't, I didn't know. It's kind of like, I know that after I had the surgery, the doctors told me, they said, now, he says, here's the thing. He says, the odds of it happening are 1,000 to 1. He says, but now that you've had this thing done, if you ever get hit or something just the right way, it could leave you paralyzed.
Not worth it.
And I said, that's it. I'm done. So that was it.
Wow. Right after you get to wrestle your buddy Terry Funk, you've just left the WWF, and, now you're back kind of to your roots here with Stan Hansen and getting a huge reaction. And then all of a sudden, just like that, it's just over.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when it's all done here, how do you feel? It might sound like a silly question on the surface, but let me kind of justify it here. You'd been on the road since the 70s at this point, and we're talking about years of travel and struggles and stress, and you're constantly trying to push this boulder up a hill, right, and accomplish these goals and scratch and claw to the top. And now all of a sudden, all that scratching and clawing is done. Is it like a relief?
In a way, it was kind of like, it was bittersweet, because I had grown up in the business. I had loved the wrestling business. I still love the wrestling business. I wanted to be my father. Again, and the one thing he and my mother never wanted me to be was a wrestler. But if you understood the way wrestling was then, and I get it. I understand the travel, the being away from home all that time and everything. And I got that. But, it's kind of like the other part of me said, well, if it was good enough for them, it's good enough for me. And of course, I had a marriage that failed. And one son came out of that marriage. And then I met Melanie in Atlanta, Georgia in 81. And we got married, and by the grace of God, she stayed with me, and she is with me today. And she is with it. You talk about somebody that there was a crisis point in our life when, I'll just say this, anybody else would have left. But my wife's words to me were, for some reason, I think that God wants me to give you another opportunity. And she goes, I'm not going to make you any promises. She said, and know this, I'm not doing this for you because you don't deserve it, but I'm doing it in obedience to God. And I told my wife, I said, if you'll give me this chance, I'll become the man you thought you married. I'll become the spiritual leader of my home. And God willing, one day, I'll regain your trust and respect. And this New Year's Eve, we'll celebrate our 42nd wedding anniversary.
Ted, in hearing you talk about, your faith and belief, it's interesting because, we would never celebrate the end of an in-ring career, certainly not. However, maybe that was God talking to you. You had a big year and a lot of ups and downs and some real struggles here in '93, and now all of a sudden it's over, and maybe God was telling you, like, hey, this part of your life is over and it's time to refocus.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly what he was trying to say. So, and here we are.
and here we are talking about it 30 years later.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
It's the story of a legend, no question. The story of life, paying all the money, telling all the fights, fist drop, $1 million dreams, tell them all good night. Everybody's got a part, everybody's got a price. DBS.